Welcome to the very first Calling All Growers workshop and webinar. I'm Liz Grow, your host, and really your guide through this amazing, wonderful world of growing, whether you're a home grower, hobbyist, whether you're just interested in learning a little more, or you're a commercial grower and you want to hear from the pros and you want to hear from your peers. This is what we do at Calling All Growers. We bring growers together to share the best information to make you a better grower. And I'm lucky enough to have the experts who joined me last week in the very first Calling All Growers show, Wendy Kornberg, second generation cannabis grower from Humboldt, and Mogan Dillon, founder, head cultivator of Acadia Farms, green facilities specialist, and K&F expert. I know we're supposed to have James Beurer as well of Organic Cultivators. He may be popping in. You guys know, this is a growers workshop. This is closed circuit. This isn't live. We can be our normal selves. You guys have stuff to do, a lot of stuff to do. You're chasing sunlight a lot. You have dirt on your hands, so that's really what this workshop's about. So Wendy, I want to turn it over to you right now because you are going to kick things off with a tutorial.
I love it. Chasing sunlight is exactly what we're doing. And we've been transplanting today. So I was like, well, this is great. People often we found that people have trouble transplanting. It's one of the things that as a grower, it's one of the first skills you need to learn along with watering. And so as I was sitting back there doing this today, I went, well, this is perfect. I'll just set aside a plant and I will bring it out and I will show you guys what we do on our farm when we're transplanting. And it's a very specific way that we do things. I need to grab one bucket, which I forgot. And the beautiful thing is I have children that tend to leave things around, so we can use this. So this is a little clone that was gifted to me. This is a tissue culture clone. I actually don't know the cultivar, so it's kind of fun. It's been about 3 weeks in this pot. It came in a little tiny root cube, like the tiniest cube I've ever seen. And we put it in baby roots soil, which is what we always use for our clones and our seedlings for starting at the very beginning. But they grow out of it pretty quickly and they need to get bumped up into healthier soil again. Okay. Like I said, this is 3 weeks. So
baby root soil. I'm going to be asking you about that at a later date.
Yeah. Yeah. Please. And please, Liz, if you have questions or something isn't clear, definitely interrupt me. I know sometimes I talk fast. So I, try to be mindful of slowing down. I get excited. So I'm like, yay.
Yeah. And you know what, if you have questions out there in the webinar, go ahead and put them in the comments and we will absolutely get to them. So please go ahead, Wendy.
And I'm going to go over this briefly because I know that Ben and I chatted beforehand about who wanted to cover what, and he is going to be covering SES, which is the nutrient maintenance solution that we use for Korean natural farming. I use it also, and that's what this is. So this is a jug of maintenance solution, and basically it's water, fermented plant juice, oriental herbal nutrient, and brown rice vinegar at different ratios. And we've done a lot of side-by-sides. I'm, if you follow me at all, I'm known as the queen of side-by-sides because I'm always like, always have a control group, always have a control group. You need to know what works and you need to know that exactly what you did is the variable that made the difference. We don't have money to waste. We don't have time to waste on small farms. So, what we found, very, very best way to transplant is you take your maintenance solution and I'm going to pour it in a jug.
Maintenance solution. As you're pouring, why is it called maintenance solution?
It's called maintenance solution because with Korean natural farming, you can use this as a general maintenance spray or drench at any time up to once a week. So it's just your general overall nutrient solution.
Okay.
And then I'm putting my plant in my little thing of maintenance solution. I'm going to tip it to the side. Let's see. Well, you get the idea. I'm tipping it to the side so that it's filling up.
I'm like I'm like leaning forward, like, who's he?
So this is just water. And then I'm sitting it in here. The reason I'm doing this is I like to let my plants get a little bit dried out before I transplant. That way, when you're soaking it in this solution, it's actually absorbing all those nutrients. Those roots are hungry for water. So they're going to suck everything up and it's going to give it a boost. And what we've seen is that when we do this, we have very, very little transplant shock. And we've done different types of, soaking in maintenance solution, taking it out of the pot first, leaving it in the pot, putting it in the hole, doing the whole 9 yards. But if if you have a small 4x4 tent, you can take it out of the pot. It's not that big of a deal. You're using maybe, 5 gallons of this stuff total. But if you're on a commercial farm like us, we're transplanting 1,500 clones, per run, per garden. I'm literally not going to make hundreds of gallons of this when I can make 5 to 10 and have that work as well. We also found that when you leave it in the pot, so still in the pot as it's soaking, okay, it doesn't damage the root structure at all. So if you have a really, really root bound plant, if you take it out and it's white roots everywhere and they're all congested up, you do need to tease them out so that they don't continue to coil and strangle themselves. But in this case, we're dinging it perfectly on the spot where we want to be. So once it's nice and wet and I can feel this pot, it's heavy, it's got weight to it. Okay. It doesn't feel light. It's dripping water. It's nicely saturated. I'm going to turn it upside down. And with these particular pots, I push on the bottom right in the middle, but you kind of got to just tease it out a little bit. It's just going to fall right out. And this is where we're at for our root structure. So this is pretty perfect. Okay. It's not root bound at all. They're a little bit growing in circles, but not terrible. So I might just tease out, a couple little ones here. But for the most part, I used to do a lot more like scrunching of the roots, if you will, like, rubbing them and things. And I found that with this, I don't have to do that. So this is time saving. And again, we don't want transplant shock. If you're, it doesn't even matter if you're a home grower or a commercial farmer, you really don't want to set yourself back a week on your time schedule. So when we do this, you can see my soil's holding together well, my roots are holding together well, and it's going to be perfect. I don't need to mess with it. So then this is the step that is one of the SOPs that people don't do. And I highly recommend everybody do this. I have my prep here. We have, this is Lost Coast plant therapy in solution, just because James had some. Normally I would use something that I would make myself. So a JWA soak, whatever you want to do to dip your plant in. Okay. Because we had, yeah. So we had aphids at one point, they are just around. We bring things in on our body. We bring things in without thinking about it. We go to the grow shop, we lean on a bag of dog food, and we bring russet mites home with us. And then we go into our plant room, and now our plants have russet mites and we don't know it. So always, 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 when you're transplanting, always dip your plants. So the other great thing about dipping as opposed to spraying is you get really full coverage. Okay. So for us, we just simply, if you're transplanting a 3-foot tall plant, obviously you can't do this, right? Unless you have a 55-gallon drum or something ridiculous. It's not realistic. So in that case, you spray. But if you can dip your plant, you just want to take it and put it in. And what I'm doing is I'm holding it. The soil is above the water line or above the solution line. Okay. And I'm holding it under there basically until the bubbles stop rising or until there's, all the plant surface is covered. It's not holding any air. So it's completely underwater. And then I'm just picking it up. You can let it drip a few times. And then I have my pot that's about, halfway full of dirt or so. And I'm just going to gently set my plant right onto the top of the dirt. Okay. So now we have plant plus soil. Ooh. And then you want to try to make sure that you don't get the surface of your plant, the leaves, try and keep them clean if you can. It's a little difficult sometimes, but now our plant leaves are covered in whatever pest killing thing we're using. Soaps are great, you guys, like potassium. Oh, I always mess it up. Potassium salts of fatty acids, right? Is I think what is generally called. It's a safer soap, if you will. There's no extra pesticides and it's a suffocant. Suffocant and a desiccant, depending on the temperature. And so all your soft-bodied insects are going to shrivel up and die because of this. But if you then cover it with dirt, you're kind of negating what you just did. So try to use your hand to hold back your plant and then put your soil in. And I'm just going to...
Wendy, your jewelry game is on point. I love it.
I know you guys are getting close-ups of the rings.
It's so good. It's so good.
So as I'm
like glam farming.
Totally. We farm in lipstick and jewelry sometimes.
It happens. Okay,
so
what are you doing?
So now the plant is got soil up all around it. Okay. So we've kind of covered it. All the edges are tucked in there. And then I'm just going to use my hands to just kind of gently press down along the sides. So basically around here, around these edges, just kind of tucking it into bed, if you will. I'm not smashing it. I'm not like squishing it in there. We don't want to compact our soil, but we want to get rid of any of those spots of air, those air gaps where there's no soil, because the roots will hit that and they won't go into that space as well. So then if you're done with your solution, so this was that maintenance solution that I dipped the root ball in, you can use this to water it in, or you can just use plain water. And when we're watering in, we want to go around, the entire pot. You want to get all the surface of the soil. When you're transplanting, it's really important to water in really, really well. When we're transplanting into the ground on the field, we go over it once, we go over it twice, and then we go over it all the in-between spaces as well. We want the ground completely saturated. And ideally then, not like, you don't want to drown it, but, really water it in well. And then ideally your mulch is there to maintain that moisture level. And you're usually not watering for at least a week after that if you do it right when you transplant.
Really? And why? Yeah. What's the point of that? You just want it to settle, or?
Well, the thing is, you don't want to overwater. Okay. So if you're watering in really well when you transplant, the water is going to be saturating the entire media. So, or medium, I should say. So all that medium is going to be holding all that moisture. If you have good mulch on top, then that mulch is preserving that moisture. It's not evaporating out. So as the roots start growing out, they're going out into those places of moisture that haven't been uptaken by the plants yet. And really what this does is it's signaling the plant to push roots out. Okay. So roots go out. You don't want them going down. You don't want them truncating. You want them filling in all the spaces. There's this whole as above, so below thing. This is more of an as below, so above. We want the structure to mimic what's going on up above us.
Yeah. So, that makes perfect sense. That makes total sense. So you're really, you're training the roots or inviting the roots to reach out and get that good stuff. And I can understand then why you wouldn't overwater, because you want them to reach out, and find what's there and use that first.
And what they're doing in that case, if they're seeking water, they're also going to hit those pockets of nutrients that haven't been utilized by the plants yet. So now, if you're amending your whole soil bed, those nutrients will be available as the plant grows. As the roots hit it, they hit new nutrients and new nutrients and new nutrients, and they have everything they need for the entire life cycle of the plant. If you've got your soil life appropriate, your biology is there, your micronutrients and trace minerals. If everything's available in the soil and you have a healthy soil food web, you won't need to top dress. You won't need to fertilize. There are exceptions, but there's a few cultivars that you can really push with nutrients. And a lot of times we are pushing cannabis, but you don't have to, is the thing. So this is done. So this has now been transplanted up from the 4-inch pot into a 1-gallon pot. And she'll be fine in this. So this is, I think, a 3-week-old plant, 3.5 weeks, something like that. So she'll be fine in this for another 4 weeks or so. And then she'll go into her final resting place. The other thing I do at this point is I want to push growth into the laterals, not straight up. So I go ahead at this time and I would take the top off. So I've now taken the growth, and some people bend it. You don't have to take it off. I don't have time to like gently bend, and we're small. We're a big farm with a small crew. So I rip it off. Again, do as you will, try it out. What works on my farm might not work on your farm. Right. So, do a side by side, do it with some and not with others. But the idea is we've taken the growing hormones off of this, and now it's going to push it into these laterals. And this will turn into a very nice, full, bushy plant really quickly. And I would not do this necessarily for a full term plant. This is something we do for clones. We do it for our light dep. We do it for what we call the turn and burn, because you want it to fill out more space faster on the horizontal rather than on the lateral.
Okay. When would you not do it? When would
I don't,
you
I don't,
hold
I don't
back?
top my full term plants that are from seed.
Mhm.
If it's going to go, I started it in spring and I'm taking it all the way through summer into fall, and I'm harvesting in October, September, October, November.
Okay.
I don't do any pruning of those plants. There are, why is this not charging?
Must be nice
Um,
along an outdoor season.
yeah.
Like October, sometimes November. I'm like,
I've harvested in December before. It's not the best idea, but sometimes you can get away with it.
Talk about full term.
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay. So you don't do that on your full term plants. Okay. So you mentioned that Ben has a recipe. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and just really quickly, this year, James really does like low stress training, and it is really beneficial. But I honestly, we usually have never had time. Yields do increase if you can train your plants to go out more. So in that case, and way back in the day when I only had 4 or 5 gardens that had 10 to 16 plants each, I definitely did more training. I definitely, bent things out through the cages and, made them stretch and made them take up more space. But, there is a cost benefit analysis you have to do on how much time you're spending versus how much yield you're actually getting.
Yep.
So, low stress training. We'll probably do some fun little side by sides this year. Maybe we'll top some of our seed starts and maybe we'll not top others and train them different directions. But again, it just depends on how much time we actually have, because we've got a lot of projects going on this year. So
right. You're farming, it's hands-on. And you brought up a great point. This is something that I want everybody to really hear and understand in the audience, that your success is dictated by you. It's about what your intended outcome is. If you're a first-time grower, is your best outcome to keep it alive and to maybe smoke something at the end of it all, or if it's to scale your business and increase your yields. This show, and ideally these webinars, will be here for you to get closer to those goals. So I just love, though, that the folks on this panel have done it all, and do know how to speak that language of the rookie grower, all the way to, the commercial producer, as you guys are at Sunibus. But Ben, I want to hear about this SES. What can you break that down for me? I'm a sucker for an acronym, even if I don't understand it.
Yeah, so SES is our seed soak solution, also known as maintenance. It's basically the exact same preparation. It's just utilized in different ways.
Okay.
So the basis of it will be water, but then you'll put in OHN, which is Oriental Herbal Nutrient, FPJ, which is fermented plant juice, and traditionally it calls for brown rice vinegar. But I'm from New England, and brown rice vinegar doesn't come often around here. So instead, I've got apple cider vinegar that I made.
Oh my gosh, this is the New England blend.
Yes. Well, that's why it's natural farming. So I have this wonderful, wonderful chart here that was given to me in my first class with Chris and Kobe. And it gives you a breakdown of all the preparations as far as what their ratio is. So the maintenance solution preparation ratio is OHN 1 to 1000, FPJ 1 to 500, and then BRV, or in my case, ARV, or no, sorry, I guess it would be
ACV.
1 to 500. So we utilize this, as Wendy has just shown, both with seed soaking to, really help with the clone transplant, offset the shock of the plant, give it a really great mineral, hormonal, and enzymatic boost at the very beginning of its life. But we can also use this through the rest of the plant's life, as Wendy had said. So we can use this up to once a week as either a foliar or a soil drench. And we do that just sort of, as the name implies, as a maintenance step. It is just giving it the little bits that it needs throughout its journey, so that way it can maintain the levels perfectly for itself. It can maintain its homeostasis. And it really allows us to allow the plant to decide what it really needs when it needs it. It's also a great microbial food source, so you can feed it into your soil as a soil drench, And it's not only therefore helping the plant, but it's also really helping to feed your soil's microbes as well and create a biome there, because you always need to remember, as below, there is above.
Mm-hmm.
So a plant's representation as far as its production for you, its growth for you, its yield and its quality are going to be very reminiscent of what's going on below ground as far as how happy its root structure is.
Mm. Yeah, I've heard that before. You're feeding the soil, and the soil's feeding the plant. I just had a thought. How does this methodology play with soil inoculants and those folks who are inoculating their soil? Is it, and this is coming from the rookie grower who's drinking from the fire hose and learning a million different ways. I mean, is it in the same family as that? I mean, are we talking about the same thing? I'm talking about a mycorrhizal inoculant within the soil. Yeah, that's where I am. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that is 100% up our alley. In fact, we do something in natural farming called IMO. It stands for indigenous microorganisms. And really, we do a lot of different fermentations in natural farming, as Wendy and I were just talking about, a few of them being used in the preparation of maintenance solution. But the real heavy lifter is IMO. It's the one that does all of our major work for us.
Wow.
And that's because microbes, as you were alluding to, are, they're really the soil's life. They're the biology down there. They're what's making that nutrient cycle happen. And they're providing the plant with the nutrients that it needs through exudate communication through the root structure. So yes, 100% inoculations is a wonderful thing. We do it through a process called IMO, which does a capture of indigenous microorganisms. So the microorganisms that are already surviving and thriving over millennia of evolution in your environment, because it's really tailored. That's one of the downfalls of generic inoculums, is that what works here won't work where Wendy lives. It won't work where you are. Simply because microbial populations vary, even in as small of a range as every 50 miles or so, even smaller if you have extreme microclimates or elevation changes. What can survive at high elevation can't survive necessarily as well at low elevation, and vice versa.
Right.
So you really want things that are tailored to your environment, because they're going to be having the best survival rate, the best population growth. And at the end of the season, when you go into a lull, if you're outdoors because of winter, or if you're just continuing your cycles as an indoor cultivator, you really don't want to have die off. And having indigenous microorganism populations helps to prevent that level of die off, because they're already designed through evolution to survive and thrive in that environment.
Well, how do you get those? I saw it looks like an aquarium on wheels, with this brown water and these tubes at the conference, at the Organic Cultivators Conference. And it was IMO, because I asked, I was like, whoa, what's that? He's like, it's IMO. And then I got to look at it under a microscope. Oh my God, it was like a party. Reminded me of like sea monkeys when I was a kid. But how do you get that? How does a grower get IMO?
So what you saw there was actually a friend and associate and fellow soil smith, Quinn, had created an IMO at his personal location, his house, and he brought it down with him with a brewing kit to make limo, which is a liquid IMO, which is basically the liquid or aqueous suspension of IMO that was then bred and that was then bred and propagated and put into an aqueous suspension, so you could foliar spray it or soil drench it. But traditionally, think of IMO as more of a consistency of like really quality, still dense though, compost. So there's going to be still some wood chip to it. There's going to be some rice and bran hull to it, because what we use for food sources for the microbes originally is white rice to capture. But then after that, we put them into a mix with a couple of different fermentations, some salt water, some plain water, and we mix them with rapid and slow food sources like rice bran for a fast food source, and split oats for a slower food source, and then wood chips for our carbon source. And that really tailors towards the microbial colonies that are fungal versus bacterial, because we're really looking to try to dominate with the fungal bodies. And it still really does a great job of propagating all of microbial life, though.
Oh, that's incredible. Now, you use a term, and a drench versus foliant, or not even versus, but foliant. Is that what you said? Foliar, and that's spraying on the leaves?
Yep, exactly. It refers to spraying a solution onto the foliage of the leaf.
Okay. Foliar. All right.
Foliar application.
Foliar application. Yes. I mean, there's bro science, then there's Korean natural farming, then there's, so many different methodologies when it comes to growing this plant. And I'd like to learn the proper terms. So good. James and Wendy are together in the matrix, out of the matrix. I don't know. Is it making you Is it not nervous, but dizzy? Ben, it's kind of making me like, um, how's it going, James?
It's going amazing. How are you?
So well, you are killing it in the chats. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Dropping the knowledge as a reminder. Anybody who's in the webinar, please feel free to join the chat, ask a question of the experts. I think no question is too large for these brains, and take advantage while you can, really. But James, so congratulations on an incredible conference a couple weeks ago in Sturbridge. Well done, you guys. You brought the Humboldt, regenerative farming methodologies to the East Coast, and it was a huge success.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And the feedback has been amazing.
Yeah.
Everyone across the board has basically, I've been getting a lot of these, people coming up to me and going, oh, it completely blew me away. So we tentatively announce here that we are talking about doing another conference this year in Oklahoma sometime in June. So I have a confirmation from Dan and Suzanne that they're willing to come out and do another date. So we're trying to work that out right now. But yeah, Suzanne's already excited. She's like, oh, I have new stuff to talk about, and I'm going to make sure we have handouts for the folder. So yeah, it's been really, really cool. All the feedback and the connections that have been made. So yeah.
That is so incredible. So incredible. So Oklahoma is calling. Now, what are you hearing? Are you hearing anything from the, your community in Humboldt? Are they excited that you are, taking the show on the road, so to speak, and, teaching? Just considering that one of the things Wendy said in our podcast was that it's common for you guys to share this knowledge in Humboldt, but to bring it out of Humboldt is something that's quite new. Are you feeling the support from, those farmers in Humboldt?
I don't know about farmers in Humboldt. Wendy could probably speak to that more than I could, just because I'm not from Humboldt and I don't really know a lot of people here. I will say that after traveling to Oklahoma, it's evident that we need to come there and bring the conference there so people can step up their game a little bit, because I think even the people who are growing quote unquote organic, they're, not doing so great. So we're going to bring it out there, and the response of farmers and growers in Oklahoma so far has been excitement. So that's promising.
Oh, good. I know they are just so eager for that information. We're in Texas, and the Oklahoma program, I mean, they just opened it up. They really did it right. They didn't make it too difficult for growers to get in and, grow plants and start their businesses and things. But as a result of that, there is a lot of cannabis on the market, and a lot of people sped to market and maybe didn't have the best practices. And so, I think the consumer is probably demanding more and demanding better. So I'm glad you guys are going to get out there and teach the growers. But really quickly, I'm not sure if you got to check out the live interview that we did today at noon Eastern with Jim Belushi of Belushi's Farm. in Oregon, Southern Oregon. He came on to share kind of his tips and tricks and learnings, really, of what it takes to be a cannabis farmer. And he told us a little bit about his farm in Oregon. So we are going to cut to that segment really quickly.
LED lights. Now I have 4 state-of-the-art grow tech greenhouses. I use lights to supplement when there's cloud cover. Like, we want to have 1,100 looms of penetration of light.
Mm-hmm.
So when the clouds come, it goes down about 750, and I got this total grow control brain that has sensors and senses it, so it'll bump the lights up in order to maintain the consistency of that 1,100 looms for the girls. So I really, no, automatically, it just shifts. It keeps the airflow perfect. It keeps the temperature and humidity perfect. I have now a great controlled environment. The LED lights, I was afraid didn't have the full spectrum, but damn, they do. You can't see it, but it's there. So I have the full spectrum of light that supplements father-son, because I don't really want to grow in a box. Something about it, even though you get more money per pound, something about the sun, you can't replace the sun.
No.
Hey, and
so
go ahead, keep going.
Oh yeah. Anyway, yeah, I'll keep going because I just love this stuff.
It's incredible. Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love hearing you talk about it. And sounds like an incredible environment.
We have controlled environments, no aphids, no rustic mites, no gophers, no squirrels, no deer, and no mold, because the moisture is so controlled.
Mm-hmm.
And so I couldn't be happier. This is our first yield. As you can see on the TV show, Growing Belushi, you watch us build these greenhouses. Mm-hmm. And it is the best harvest and the best cannabis that we've grown.
Well, okay. So that is the clip of, obviously, there's Jim Belushi talking about his greenhouses now. It was really, really great hearing about, I think, the progression of where he'd come from to, where he is now. He's not employing organic farming practices at his farm, but he did talk a little bit about some sustainable practices that he's trying to employ. And so, I think that brings me to my next question. When a grower is making equipment choices, Ben, how can they keep sustainability in mind when they're making equipment choices, if they have to use lights and other equipment?
So the 2 biggest expenses for your equipment are always going to be your HVAC and your lighting. Both your initial expense as well as your operational expenses. Those are going to be your 2 biggest ones as far as equipment goes. So when you choose a lighting system and you choose a HVAC or HVAC, which is heating, air conditioning, ventilation, and dehumidification all in one integrated unit, rather than treating them as separate systems. So that right off the bat is a great way that you can be more sustainably minded. Taking one system that can do what 2 systems were previously doing. Instead of having HVAC and dehumidification, you can have an HVAC unit that does all of that in one. They're also capable of doing things like doing your CO2 emissions and mitigation. So that allows you to remove another system from the entire equation. So the more that you can get your systems to integrate, the more you're able to get them to piggyback and work together versus working against each other, the more you're able to optimize your space. You're able to minimize your operational expenses, which makes you more sustainably minded, both business-wise and ecologically. By using less resources, specifically things like natural gas, coal, and electricity, then we're able to offset how much we do reuse, and therefore, be a little bit more ecologically conscious and also produce a product at a cheaper price.
Okay. Now, what would you say, to the grower who is like, yeah, well, that sounds really expensive, the one side, the one piece of equipment to kind of rule it all, when I think, a lot of growers are Frankensteining together, their grows.
Very true. It's difficult to be sustainably minded and minimize your capital expense. Honestly, to be efficient, which is what it really comes down to, efficiency costs money. You have to put money into systems, you have to put money into equipment. But if you want to do something, if you're truly passionate about it and it's your dream and it's your goal, you find a way. And if it's also your dream and your goal, you want it to succeed. So you don't want to shortcut yourself. You don't want to limit yourself. And yeah, sometimes you got to bootstrap things together and make choices, but maybe that's where you sacrifice on something else so you can put the money into something like your HVADC. That's one system that you're never, ever going to change. If you are, you're changing your entire facility. So why wouldn't you make your single largest capital expense the right one for the long term versus piecemealing it? Do something else that's going to offset that expense. Maybe you don't get the best lights right off the bat. Maybe you don't get the top-notch irrigation systems, but you do put the money into the things that you need right away that are going to control your entire environment. Now, when it comes to lights, things like PPFD is really, really important for what you want to be able to hit at your canopy. But what you need to consider is operationally what that light costs you. So what's your micromole per joule conversion? What is your actual square footage that light covers effectively with a solid PPFD footprint? Because you'll find a lot of fall offs when you start looking at certain lighting companies that they'll have, a couple of great numbers, but then other ones not. There's big holes, which means you need a lot of cross lighting, which means you need more lights, which means you're actually putting more energy into that specific space than if you used a different light. You also really want to consider things like how you're going to offset temperatures from that, because you don't want lights that are absolutely fantastic but are producing so much heat that now your HVADC has to offset a lot more than if you were using a light that was slightly lower progression but was able to not make your HVADC work better. So it's all about how systems integrate together. That's where sustainability really comes in.
Right. And I bet that's where things run amok when you're Frankensteining things together. You're just trying to maintain that homeostasis, and every new ingredient that you add, has its own, its own side effects, if you will. So, and I think it's important to mention, to folks in the audience, that, Ben Mogan Dillon is a green facilities expert and consultant. You work with the big guys on helping to make their facilities more sustainable and more green. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's really what I've been focusing on for the past few years, is trying to turn our green industry a little bit greener, and trying to help a lot of the people that are doing good work be able to survive and thrive in the developing market as there's consolidation and more MSOs come online. This industry that we love and work really hard for is going to be changing in the next few years quite rapidly as more states come online, and as soon as federal comes online, especially, commerce is really going to change what the market looks like. So if you want to be able to establish yourself now and survive that turn of event, then you need to do it with a very long-term mindset, and really be able to, have sustainability integrated from your floor plan up. Have that 10-year plan built in from the ground up.
Yeah, that is great advice. I mean, it's just, you're making this huge investment in your future. Why wouldn't you think along those lines? But, it's easy to get excited and just want to do what you can do now and think, okay, well, next year I'll change it. But, it's tough. I think a lot of growers lose a lot of money and, resources, and unfortunately, sometimes their love for it, even because they're not as successful as they'd hoped, because they are kind of rushing into it.
Yeah, there's the age-old adage that, 1 ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And honestly, in cannabis, I think that it might be more like maybe 5 pounds of cure. But it really comes down to just prior planning prevents poor performance.
Yeah. Good point. Always wise words. So Wendy and James, since you're both in the same frame, I'm going to ask you both this question. How can commercial grows begin to start to employ regenerative farming practices? It sounds good. You want to be able to do it, but it's like, I've come this far and I've got to answer to these investors, and, I'm not going to have my business if I don't keep producing, what I'm producing, and I know what works. But how can they move in that direction?
Hire Ben. No, the real answer though is that it is a learning curve, and knowing how and when to do things and why to do them and how to make it cost effective. You really hire a good consultant if you don't know what steps to take and you don't have the time or energy to try, or money to try and figure it out yourself.
Right.
We have so many people contact us saying like, oh my gosh, I hired this guy. He was $300 a day, and like my grow is trashed. What do I do? And it's usually at the point that it's gone too far. I'm like, you're so far into bloom, and there's so many problems like trying to turn around at this point. And usually this is via online interactions. I'm like, this is a boots on ground situation. Like you have to have somebody who really knows what they're doing and has been there before and is worth the money. So again, kind of like what Ben is saying, is that initial capital expense is sometimes hard, but what you're going to do is you're going to save on your operational expenses from then on out, because the learning curve of starting to farm regeneratively, you're looking at a good 3 to 5 year learning curve where you're going to make mistakes. And at this point, they can be so costly that you're not able to get through to the point where you're bringing in enough money to make those mistakes not a big deal. So
Right.
And then a very simple answer that anybody can do, that you don't need a consultant for this step, but you might need to figure out how to, you're gonna have to refigure out how to grow again, is simply transitioning from pots or bags into beds, and to stop dumping your soil. If you want living soil, you're not changing it out every single cycle. You can't really buy living soil in a bag. Most of the, quote unquote, living soils that I've scoped once I got them have limited microbiological activity. So you really need to know that, you're using that as a starting medium, and that's great, but you're going to have to kind of, feed your soil in order to get it sweetened in that spot where it's just on point and easy. And it does take a little bit of time, and it takes somebody who has a little bit of know-how to really make it simple. If you don't have that, money or the person to tap to say like, can I get some help on this? You can definitely start by taking small steps, transition part of your grow. Don't always go all in, because if you make one of those little mistakes that costs, big time at the end, you didn't lose everything. So transition slowly, ask for advice, get help. If you want to go fast and you don't want to transition slowly, you have to hire somebody to help you stay on point, especially at commercial cultivation levels.
Great. God, that's great
I
advice.
don't know how much more I can add to that, other than I'll reiterate, start small. And if you are going to hire someone to come into your facility and help you transition, still you need to start small. And you need to do your due diligence and make sure that the person that's coming into your facility isn't going to come in and fuck up your grow, because that's your livelihood and it happens a lot. So be sure whoever you're listening to is qualified. They know what they're doing. They can back up what they're saying. Hopefully they have a team behind them that can back them up.
References.
Some references, other grows.
At least 5.
Yeah. So do your due diligence and do some research and find out who's coming into your grow. That's key. That can save you a ton of money and heartache down the line.
Oh my God, say it louder for the people in the back. That is what I'm really hearing from, Oklahoma, our neighbors to the north. What is happening is a lot of folks are kind of losing their shirts because they're excited to be in the biz, and they're hiring these consultants from California. And oh Lord, it's just not working out. But it's, I think it's also important to mention that, if you hire a consultant, that they've done work in the area, that they've done work in the region, if you are, in fact, I think, not looking to farm in a box and looking to use, your resources and the nature around you.
Even if you're farming in a box, it's still going to be, tempered by your outside environment. So farming in an indoor grow in Colorado, where it is just dry and cold in the winter and hot and dry in the summer, it's just dry, right? Is very different than Oklahoma, which is just, very moist. Like Oklahoma has all kinds of trouble with leaf spot diseases, right? Colorado doesn't have that, but they have issues with Aspergillus and total yeast and mold content. California on the coast is very different than California inland. And even indoor, you still have outside air coming in. So you still have to know what your environmental factors are in the area that you're at and why they're there. Why is Aspergillus a problem in Colorado? Well, it's a problem there because it's being drawn in. It's really prevalent in their soils. So as it gets dry, it gets dusty. As it gets dusty, the dust gets picked up by the wind, blows in through the filtration, and now you have an issue inside the grow. So, again, it's an indoor, it's enclosed, it is a controlled environment, but you cannot control everything. You just, maybe if we're on the moon, we might be able to control everything, but until that happens, you got to realize you can't control it all.
Right. God. Great point. So why don't we hear a little bit more from our friend and fellow grower, Jim Belushi over in Southern Oregon? What advice would you have for growers just starting out, right now? Maybe those growers who are a little intimidated to start.
Well,
Wisdom.
I don't pretend to have advice for professional growers. That's like chefs giving chefs advice.
What about home growers?
Home growers.
People who just want to be closer to the plant, but who may be just intimidated. They don't know, where to start, or they're just nervous about it. They don't think they have the skills for it.
Well, there's a few things. First of all, it's a weed. You can throw it in your backyard and it will grow. And then you can start the relationship, and the plant will tell you what to do, when to prune, when the leaves get a little brown, not overwatering it, keep it in the sun, it needs to have airflow. But on the growing Belushi, my cousin Chris and I actually go through a competition of growing. And we go to Grow Generation, which is the, Walmart, Home Depot of cannabis growing products. They got all the nutrients, everything. And we do a race and we create a package of a grow kit. And we list it on the show. And Grow Generation was so excited about it that they said, we're going to make that kit and call it a Belushi Farms Grow Kit. So they're doing that right now. So you can literally go into Grow Generation or go online and pre-order for a Belushi Farms Grow Kit, where it's a tent that gives you everything to grow, instructions, and you can grow your 6 plants, your 5 plants, whatever your state allows you to do. Totally indoor, with the lights and the fans. That's one thing you can do. The other advice is just love it, make sure it has nitrogen, nice soil, porous soil. It's like growing tomatoes. You want to give it the best soil. You want to give it the best light. You want to give it the best air. Air is very important. Those girls like to breathe. You don't have to worry about the weather because they're strong. You just don't want to get cold. Too cold at night.
You're sweet. You sound like a dad giving advice for, you're going out on the night on the town and giving advice to the babysitters. Very cute.
Yeah.
Jim was just loved it so much. He kind of got giddy when he was talking about it. And I thought that was really cute. I don't know. I loved it. So before we wrap up, you guys, calling all growers, all about sharing information, and being the best you can be at whatever level you are. Right. So, while ask your questions, ask them now, in the chat room. You've got about 9 minutes. But let's ask the panelists, what resources would you recommend for growers out there? What are your favorite resources? Ben, let's start with you.
Whatever's local to you that you can utilize that is inexpensive. A lot of what sustainability and natural farming is about is utilizing what's readily available to you, because there's carbon footprints attached to everything and there's expenses attached to everything. So the farther something has to travel to get to you, the less ecologically sustainable, the less business sustainable that it is, and the higher it's going to cost. So doing your due diligence, doing your homework to find local resources that you can utilize. And sometimes that means, reaching out to people that are more communicated into the community than you are.
Mhm.
But there's always places that you can look, always people you can talk to.
Great, awesome. And what about informational resources? Are there any blogs that you like? I know that you have a website. Where can people find you? And then tell us what else you would recommend.
So you can find me at www.acadiafarmsfamily.com or Benjamin Acadia Farms on Instagram, and also Acadia Farms Family on Facebook. We actually just launched a new website. We were originally a products facing company, and we've transitioned over the past period now to be much more services facing, because that's really where the industry has been taking me. And I've been loving doing the education work. So it's something I really wanted to embrace. And as far as other educational points that I would say are really solid, the whole teaming book line, teaming with microbes, teaming with fungi, those are really, really phenomenal resource. They're a great starting point for people that are looking for something that's really text-based that they can learn from. If you're looking for something a little more interactive, Chris Trump has a lot of really wonderful natural farming videos on YouTube. However, they are guidelines. They are not exclusively educational. You absolutely cannot learn to natural farm from just what he gives you on there. It's amazing and incredible content, but so much of natural farming is taste, touch, smell, feel, emotion, philosophy, and you can't really get that from anywhere other than one of his hands-on courses, which was the third thing I would recommend. Is if you're interested in natural farming, attend one of the Soil Smith and Chris Trump's classes. They're really amazing educational experiences. I believe there's going to be one on the East Coast here on Cape Cod this year.
Ooh, what month?
I'm not sure yet, but I believe in the fall.
Okay.
I think it's October.
I was gonna say, I think
I have the dates written down. It's at David DeWitt's farm.
Yeah.
October. Okay. Well, I mean, I survived Massachusetts in February, so I feel like I can do it all. Okay, James and Wendy, let's talk about resources, best resources that you have to, I guess, the advice that you have to for growers, resources. Where can people find you? Informational, all that good stuff.
Well, I think it depends on how you're coming to natural farming, where you should start. If it's a completely foreign idea to you, growing plants, it may be something you've never done. There's a book called One Straw Revolution, which is kind of like a story of a guy learning how to natural farm. And so that's a way to really just kind of get psyched about learning all of this stuff. And Ben mentioned the Teaming With series by Jeff Lowenfels, Teaming with Microbes, Teaming with Nutrients, and Teaming with Fungi. Those are really good books. They are user-friendly. So it is broken down in layman's terms. It's pretty easy to understand. You can find Jeff Lowenfels on YouTube talking about the soil food web. So what I would suggest for farmers or growers who are new to natural farming or organic growing, they're maybe using salt-based nutrients, they should go online and learn about the soil food web. Learning the soil food web and the basics behind how that functions is really how you need to start to put all this together. If YouTube is an easier way for you to consume information and start down this path, that's a good place to start. Find Joshua Steensland on YouTube and look for his no-till talks. It's a very simple method. So being as simple as possible and not overthinking things is a really good place to start. So that way you don't end up overcomplicating things and down a path where like you've built up this giant bed of soil and it has 20 different amendments in it because you thought the way to go is building a super soil. Well, it's not a living soil. It's a giant bed of a media with a bunch of different dry amendments. So maybe you didn't do it right because you don't have the foundation yet. So get to some in-person classes like Ben mentioned. Chris Trump's a great one to go to if you're looking to learn Korean natural farming and making your own inputs. his videos on YouTube. You can find them on our website, organiccultivators.net. So that's a good place to go for information. And we're starting to build that out some more. Ben is someone who's helping us do that. But just learn as much as you can, read as much as you can, go online, find groups, but be discerning, get information from good people, find out who you're getting information from. People like Wendy, people like Ben, people like Chris, Dan Kittredge, go to them for who they learned from. And that's a good way to go. John Kemp's podcast, listen to John Kemp. It's a podcast that's available. That's a great one to listen to. I could go on and on, but yeah.
Yes, I love it. Take the baton, Wendy.
I was like, hey, podcast. I was going to mention that.
Get out of my head.
Shaping Fire is my very favorite podcast ever.
What is it called?
A great interviewer, and he has really, really good resources on it. Todd also, Kiss Organics has a great podcast. Shaping Fire is like the podcast where I was like, oh, this is why people like podcasts. Now I get it. This is super cool. I also love No-Till Farmers, I think it is. It's a guy named Jesse, and he goes into a lot of different farming. This is more just farming specific, not cannabis specific. And then I have people that, have kind of become more recent. Sorry, we've got 5 kids also. So, we're kind of in our downtime here. So they keep coming and interrupting us. Them and the cats.
Thank you.
So people that I've, have recently entered, and by recent, I mean, in the last like 3 to 5 years, entered my sphere of like, ooh, I love these people. There's a lady named Nicole Masters who's in Australia, and she's phenomenal. There's a lot of, if you just search them, you can usually find either articles or interviews or podcasts or YouTube, all the above, right?
Oh, yeah.
So Nicole Masters is amazing. Of course, we mentioned Dan Kittredge, who's amazing. He has a 9-part thing on YouTube with the Bionutrient Food Association, and it's just like mind-blowing how much information he covers in that. And there was somebody else that I was just thinking of. Dr. James White. So Dr. James White is at Rutgers over there on the East Coast, and he goes into the rhizophagy cycle, and it's all about how roots work in the soil and why living soil is important. Because with Korean natural farming, we're very focused on fungi. We want to make sure we're fungally dominant in our soil because our understanding is that they're better at mining minerals and things. But he actually goes into how bacteria is incredibly important and how roots will actually like suck bacteria into their system, rip off the exoskeleton, if you will. It's not an exoskeleton, but you get the idea.
I like the drama.
Rips it apart, pulls the nutrients that are in that outer cellular wall into itself, and then spits it back out, where it either has to rebuild its outer cell wall or it dies. And he has videos of this. You can look at it. He has one on YouTube. If you search James White rhizophagy cycle, you can see this video of it happening like in real time, watching bacteria go into the root. I mean, it's mind blowing. It's just stuff that I'm like, as a soil science nerd, like I totally geek out on where we are now compared to where we used to be. Like why we don't want to soak our seeds in hydrogen peroxide, or if we do, we want to then re-inoculate, because those seeds, even the second that they germinate, they need to have bacteria around them. So, I mean, I could go on and on and on, but those are kind of like my main kind of resources of people to search out. And I just ordered, and it literally came in yesterday, a book by Nicole Masters called, I think it's For Love of Soil or something like that. So I'm really excited to start, digging into that on our next plane trip. And then Sunibus on Instagram, I usually do a lot of informational things. I share a lot of my side-by-sides. We also do have a YouTube channel, which I think is completely empty right now. But this summer, we are really dedicated to getting content out, talking about every little thing that we do, as we do it, why we do it, so that there's a little bit more in-depth information, not just here's how to transplant, but also here's why. And, I covered that, and that was a decent little chunk of time, right? But going into all the other things about that as well, like, why we don't want to use salt-based nutrients and how that actually affects the soil at a really real time. Like, awesome to use sunshine. Awesome. I'm fine with supplemental lighting. I don't have issues, but we do know that the sunshine interacts with the soil in different ways. So there's just so much information, and there's also a lot of bad information. So again, as we keep reiterating, like, pay attention to who you're talking to and listening to, and don't necessarily follow the hype, but really be a little bit reserved with, like, asking questions. I love it when people ask hard questions, or when people are like, that is not my experience. I'm like, that's rad. I love seeing something that works different for somebody else.
Yeah.
But, in general, there are certain things that just seem to hold true no matter where you are. And usually that has to do with the soil food web.
Yeah. And so YouTube channel is Sunnivis and Organic Cultivators. And we're going to be speaking at Spanvis.
Yeah.
So we're going to Spain to speak at Spanvis.
Oh, guys, all the cool kids are going. Say hi to Jim Belushi for me. Well, I'm just so grateful for your time, Wendy, James, and Ben, truly for, sharing your knowledge and your tribal knowledge, and with those growers who are inspired by you, and, who want to do better and grow better. And it's really my joy in life to help facilitate that conversation. So thank you so much for that. I want to remind everyone to, follow, subscribe to the show, subscribe to Pro Cannabis Media on YouTube. It's Pro Cannabis Media on all of the streaming channels. So go ahead and just get that app. Green Rush Live is happening tomorrow. And I hear that one Terry Booth, the CEO of Audacious, will be on the show tomorrow. Audacious is a new private equity firm here in America. Terry Booth, though, is Canadian, formerly of Aurora. So he's kind of a big dog. So tune in to Green Rush Live tomorrow. Thanks again, everybody, for joining this webinar. We hope to see you next month. In 2 weeks, we'll have our next Calling All Growers show. We'll be announcing our special guests very shortly here. So stay tuned in. Until then, I'm Liz Grow, and I'm calling all growers. We'll see you next time.
Meet Caduceus Science, the alternative wellness company. You know CBD, but how about CBG, CBN? That's right, Caduceus Science produces a range of full-spectrum products, all lab-tested in small batches to maintain the highest quality of products. CaduceusScience.com. Hey, you want to grow your own plants? Check out Style Lighting's Grow Kit. It has everything you need to become an expert home grower and bring the power of the sun indoors. Style Lighting uses TCP's high-powered commercial LEDs that deliver twice the output in the market. The Grow Kit has a grow bag, a timer, chains to hang the light, and of course the best in the business lighting system by TCP. Check out stylelighting.shop for more information.